Sweet victory. Biggest win in decades. The Miami Hurricanes are advancing into the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff, and the Canes just did something to Texas A&M that had not been done in over 100 years.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On is now the #1 sports podcast network. And yeah, folks, we're still riding high after that 10-3 win. You talk about a defensive slugfest. You talk about Miami being tougher than the opposition. You heard Mike Elko last night. He admitted his Texas A&M Aggies were beaten on the line of scrimmage, which is pretty obvious when Miami's able to record 7 sacks, only gave up 2. Miami rushes for 175 yards. Folks, this is a complete team. This is a physical team. And on this loaded episode, we're going to talk with our special guest about how now we're moving on to Ohio State. We're 10 days away from the revenge game. That's who we're going to see in the next round. We'll give out game balls for this victory because, yeah, the entire team played really well, folks. You don't win a game like this on the road at College Station without a team effort, but there are a handful of individuals who put on their clutch pants when they were needed most. And, yeah, we'll talk about this historic college football playoff win for Miami with our good friend Brad Tejeda. Brad, who's on his way back from College Station. He's between flights right now. And Brad, I mentioned something that hadn't been done in over a century. The last time the Aggies at home had been held to under 3 points or less, I should say, the last time they were held to 3 points or less at home was in 1921. Between the world wars. I don't think the forward pass had been implemented yet in 1921. They were shut out. There was a 0-0 tie in 1921. Miami turned the clock back on defense to 1921 yesterday. How are you?
Alex, man, thank you as always for having me. What a game. What a weekend. Well, I mean, there's no better time to be a Miami Hurricane than right now, right? If you got orange and green, throw it on. I know most of you are already rocking it, but this is where the bandwagon fans come out, right? We are now one of those teams that you got to watch out for. Like you mentioned before, this was a statement game. What happened this past weekend, there was only one team that was talking the whole time. One team was talking, one team was preparing to play this football game. I had the pleasure to talk to Shannon Dawson and a few other guys the day before the game at the hotel. And I can tell you right now, I knew going into that game, those guys, they were more than ready. They were ready to drop their cojones. Let me just put it like that. There was a reason why I think most Cane fans, especially me being at the game, shout out to all the Miami Hurricane fans first and foremost who made the trip wherever you came from. I mean, we didn't fill the stadium, like Texas A&M, but we traveled for sure. Shout out to Steve Kim, Coach Hayes, and all the Cane fans that I got to chop it up with over the weekend. But hey, the 100,000 plus fans wasn't enough for the 100 Cane fans, right? Mario Cristobal and the staff said it best: 100 over 100,000. I've heard the saying, one gorilla versus the 100 men. Who could win? I don't know, but I could tell you right now, 100 Hurricanes can beat 100,000 plus Aggies, and we damn sure proved it this past weekend.
Boy, did this victory, it showed so much character for the Hurricanes. Obviously, points were really tough to come by. Even the field goals, 1 miss, 2 miss, 3 misses by Carter Davis, and the conditions were tough. I mean, there were swirling winds there. You being at that stadium, Brad, you know better than anybody. But Miami was able to overcome that, right? They were able to overcome that with ferocious defense, and then the offense came alive when it needed to, right? And let's talk about that, Brad, because you think about Miami's final offensive possession in the game, and then the final defensive stand. Heroes put their capes on in those moments. Shannon Dawson, you mentioned you chopped it up with him the day before the game. Well, he was chopping it up with Mark Fletcher before the final drive, and he told Fletch, we're going to put this ball in your hands, and you're going to drive us down the field. Fletcher relayed that message to his offensive line, and that was the Mark Fletcher drive. He broke off the 56-yard run, which was the longest run of his career. So You're going to talk about the perfect time to break off the longest run of your collegiate career, to do that at the biggest possible moment. Mark Fletcher is one of my favorite Miami Hurricanes ever. And then, Brad, he sets up the touchdown from Malachi Toney. It was Carson Beck to Toney for 11 yards for what turned out to be the game-winning score, the go-ahead score at that time. And, Brad, I felt so good for Malachi Toney because, throughout most of the game, Texas A&M did a fantastic job defensively on him. Like, he had no space. There was somebody breathing down his neck the entire game. He had a costly fumble the drive before. He was inconsolable there for a few minutes. The fact that they put the football back into Malachi's hands after Fletcher had been burning him right up the middle, then to stretch the field with Toney on that final play. I thought it was a great play call by Shannon Dawson, and I love the fact that Malachi had the chance to redeem himself after the really tough moment the drive before.
I mean, first and foremost, you go back to those two back-to-back drives on offense and on defense to win the game. It goes right back to what Mario Cristobal brought to this program, right? It's the grind, it's tenacity. When things get tough, your back's against the wall. How are you gonna show up? And that's exactly what we did. I mean, you talk about the missed field goals. I mean, that stadium, one of the craziest atmospheres by far ever been a part of. The Aggie fans were a treat. I mean, it was impossible to talk crap to the Aggie fans. They were just so nice. And I tell you what, between going to Midnight Yell the night before and being in the stadium, there's definitely some juju in there. I mean, anytime Miami kicked the field goal, that wind picked up. When the Aggies would kick a field goal, that thing winded down. I don't know what it was, but anybody that was in the stadium can confirm it was crazy. But I mean, going back to two quotes that we heard after the game, one from Mario Cristobal talking about Mark Fletcher literally being the DNA of this football team.
Yeah.
Just goes to show you, back against the wall, someone like him, I mean, battling through injuries. We saw this time last year, you get a guy like Damian Martinez out of the portal. People are already writing Mark Fletcher off. He wanted to show the world what he can do, and he continues to do. And I know his dad is definitely looking down on him proud for that game yesterday. And then when you look at Bryce Fitzgerald, right? This is the young man that's been a ball hawk all year, and he's only getting better with more reps. Very young guy who, I mean, I could compare him with Cam Kitchens right off the bat. I mean, the way he's playing, his football IQ, and I think what sets him apart from most freshmen is the studying and the amount of work he does off the field when people aren't watching. And then when you bring up the Malachi Toney instance, the minute he fumbled that catch, I turned to my girlfriend, I turned to the Aggie fans next to me. I said, that next possession, which will be our final possession of the game on offense, I want that ball in Malachi Toney's hands because I know it won't happen again. And that's what happened. And going back to the Mark Fletcher runs, man, I think we can all agree as Miami fans, this was one of the first games in a while where we wanted the simple vanilla playbook. We saw anytime we ran, we were getting 10, 15 plus yards. And I think the frustrating thing for us Miami fans was first down, you get 15 yards, let's run it back. We didn't do that a lot, right? We started to throw the ball a little bit. Again, going back to, some of the things that I heard a couple days before, I think this was a statement game that they wanted to kind of prove not only to themselves, but to the world. They're tired of the rah-rah and the media portion. They want to show that this is a Miami team capable of beating anyone in the nation. And like I said before, this past weekend was a statement game. We're going to be moving on to Ohio State in 10 plus days, and that's going to be the revenge game. This staff, this team, they knew coming into this game, they had a chip on their shoulder. Well, guess what? Next week, there isn't a chip on your shoulder. You came to the Miami to beat the Florida States, to beat the Floridas, and to make sure that what happened back in 2002 doesn't happen again, and that's the Ohio State Buckeyes. And we got to definitely make sure we take care of business there.
You bring up a fair point about the narratives around this team. I go back to preseason when Akeem Mesidor, who played an excellent game yesterday, as did Rueben Bain. We'll talk about him, but when Akeem had that shirt on that said enough, with the U as the U logo, and when he explained to us in the media what that meant, like they've had enough of that reputation that people have about Miami. They can't finish games, they can't finish seasons, they're soft, they're inconsistent, all that stuff. And so, Brad, I can't tell you how many times over the last couple of weeks, I went on a few Texas A&M shows, went on some national shows, and I felt like they all were asking me the same questions. And a lot of the questions they were asking me was, well, do you really trust Mario Cristobal? He's not a winner. Like, can you really trust him to win a game like that? Or can you trust Carson Beck to go in there and not throw interceptions. He's going to find a way. Like I was getting those questions in a blender just over and over and over again. And obviously in the case of Beck, he didn't light the stat sheet on fire. Didn't need to, right? He needed to play an efficient game. And, Miami's offense needed to attack the weak spot of A&M's defense, which was their running defense, which Miami did. And Beck threw 0 interceptions, which was massive. You compare him to Marcel Reed, who threw 2 interceptions and lost a fumble. The poise of Carson Beck was a big difference in that football game. And then as for Mario Cristobal, I hope people are starting to put more respect on his name, Brad, because, yeah, listen, I mean, people won't forget the knee that wasn't taken against Georgia Tech. Guess what? Miami took a knee yesterday to close out that victory, right? For anyone who thinks that dude cannot win, Cristobal has put together a team. He's assembled the staff of winners, and Miami gets it done yesterday. And when we come back, I want to talk more about the defensive side of the football because I think a certain offensive tackle from Texas A&M is probably going to stay off of his social media for a little while because Brad Tejeda has been all over his mentions for the past 24 hours. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We got Brad Tejeda with us, and we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Folks, we're only getting started with FanDuel. And Miami, by the way, 9.5-point underdogs against Ohio State. Do with that what you will. But the Hurricanes are plus 9.5. Folks, NFL Sundays, we're in the midst of one right now. They move really fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump right into that moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet the next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Guys, if you want to take your everydayer experience to the next level, join our awesome Everydayer Club. You can sign up, click the link in the show notes below, or lockedoncanes.supercast.com. We provide an exclusive newsletter, exclusive episodes only for the subscribers, and a whole lot of other stuff, including text one-on-one access with me. lockedoncanes.supercast.com to sign up and make the most of your everydayer experience. All right, so again, like Brad, I'm gushing about Miami's defensive performance. I mentioned first time in over a century they were held the Aggies to 3 points or less at home. You just look at this season, right? Because I don't care about 1921. I care about yesterday, right? A&M this season was averaging 36.3 points per game on offense. Miami holds them to 3. And Brad, if I'm giving out, my first game ball on the defensive side, and I know this is a man you want to talk about a little bit, Rueben Bain Jr., who he had a little bulletin board material provided to him a couple weeks ago, and he turns his performance into 3 sacks and a blocked field goal.
He wrote something he couldn't cash, right? I think when it was all said and done, Rueben Bain put on a show like he was meant to do in a Miami Hurricane uniform. Shout out to that young man and the family, man. And Trey Zuhn, yeah, he's got a new daddy now, and his name is Rueben Bain. This young man, this poor guy, let me tell you something, Alex. This young man is not going to be able to order a Reuben sandwich for the rest of his life without getting nightmares because of Rueben Bain. You talk about another guy on the defensive side of the ball, talk about defense. We heard another guy for Texas A&M on the defense side of the ball named Cassius Howe, who was supposed to be this all-world beater, someone that Rueben Bain had nowhere close to. Well, guess what? The Miami Hurricanes turned Cassius into cashless. That's exactly what happened on Saturday. The Miami Hurricanes put a stamp on exactly who they are, and only one team did the talking, and only one team put on points on the scoreboard like they were supposed to. And like you said, it was a 10-3 ball game, but anyone that was at that game. I mean, the play calling in itself was definitely a little tricky just because the win factor. I mean, we talked about the kicking,
Yeah.
but there was a reason why there were only 2 passes the whole game that went 25 plus yards, right? You had one from
Yeah.
Carson Beck that was overthrown to JoJo Trader that would have been an easy touchdown. Again, the wind took that ball. And then on the other side, Marcel Reed threw a deep pass to Craver. And if you were at the game, the ball was definitely getting picked up off the wing. It wasn't really a good ball, but it was a tremendous tracking ability and catch by Craver. So shout out to him. It was a great catch. But all in all, I mean, the play calling, the win factor, the crowd, we heard all this noise about what was going to be the determining factor of beating the Miami Hurricanes. And to your point, it was a lot of talk of stuff that had nothing to do with the game of football. I mean, being at Midnight Yell, the first 20 minutes of Midnight Yell, literally everything had to do with Carson Beck. Had nothing to do with
Really?
Rueben Bain, nothing to do with Mario Cristobal, nothing to do with the Miami Hurricanes. It was all about talking trash about Carson Beck and him coming from the SEC and him scared. Well, guess what? The SEC isn't so dominant anymore. And we kind of told people that weeks before, like, hey, every win you guys played in the SEC were bottom feeder programs.
Yeah.
Line it up against a team like Miami, and we're going to see what happens. And that's exactly what got done. But yeah, man, Rueben Bain definitely gets a game ball. Bryce Fitzgerald, another guy, gets a game ball. And I mean, we're talking about the defense, but a guy on the offensive side that I'm going to continue to harp on week in and week out. And I think this guy just keeps getting undervalued here at the University of Miami, and that's Keelan Marion. I think when we first
Yes,
got
sir.
Keelan Marion, as soon as we got Keelan Marion out of the portal, I think most fans were like, all right, this is going to be our kick return or punt return guy. We're finally going to get some dynamic things on special teams. Maybe we'll get some Devin Hester type magic, right? Well, guess what? That didn't happen. He wasn't our special teams guy. That goes to Malachi Toney. We've seen that. Malachi Toney has been a trip and a blocker in front of him away from having 2 or 3 touchdown returns already this year, right? But Keelan Marion, just time and time again at wide receiver, just very undervalued, man. He is phenomenal. His work ethic, and I just think between him and a guy like Jacoby Thomas, these are 2 senior transfer portal guys that I think all Miami fans, the more you pay attention to them on and off the football field, these are guys we wish we had at Miami for 3, 4 plus years. They just embody what it means to be a University of Miami. So shout out to Keelan Marion. Got to give him a game
Yeah,
ball.
I mean, yeah, I mean, Mark Fletcher, obviously, I mean, it's he probably maybe even gets the first game ball, to go off for a career high 172 yards, 10.1 yards per carry, sets up the game-winning score, had his longest career run. He gets a game ball for sure. I also, and again, I know statistically it was not a great game for Malachi Toney, but like I feel like you score the game-winning touchdown, you get a game ball, and that was an important moment for him to bounce back from the fumble. So I give him a game ball. And then, obviously, Bryce Fitzgerald, you mentioned, I agree wholeheartedly. 2 interceptions, including the game sealer. He's got 6 interceptions now this season as a true freshman, which is crazy. I want to give a game ball, Brad, to Mohamed Toure when he put his body on the line on the second to last play. I mean, he demolished that receiver to break up that pass. And I know, like, he got a little shaken up in the process, Toure. So, like, he literally puts his body on the line to secure that win. And Miami does not get that win without what Toure did, because that would have probably been a completion and a touchdown if he hadn't, just jacked that receiver up.
No, that was the signifying tackle right there for sure, no doubt. And I think, I mean, Corey Heatherman, what an impressive hire. Got to be probably the best hire Mario Cristobal's ever had at Miami, I would say, is our guy, Corey Heatherman. I mean, what he's been able to do with this defense and turn it around in just one season is insane. I mean, we can only imagine what this team would have looked like if we had last year's offense with this year's defense, right? It wouldn't even be close with teams. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and that's fine. We're not going to make excuses as Miami fans. All we're going to do is continue to line it up and support this team, and that's exactly what we got to do. We got 10 days until we play Ohio State. Like I said before at the beginning of the show, this is the perfect time to rock that Hurricane gear. I don't care where you are, where you live, where you're from. I live in Gainesville, Florida.
I'm rocking.
So
I'm in Austria. I'm in Austria right now, and I'm rocking my Canes gear. These people don't even know over here, but das you. It is all about das you. I'm trying to tell them.
Dude, we're worldwide for a reason, man, and it's great to be a Miami Hurricane.
Yeah, let me share with you guys what Texas A&M coach Mike Elko said after the game, he was gracious in defeat. Elko said, we lost the game at the line of scrimmage, and I think it got worse in the second half. I think we just couldn't keep them off of us. We couldn't get the run game established. Yeah, Miami held them to under 90 rushing yards. He says we became one-dimensional. Once we became one-dimensional, they were able to tee off. I think they finished with 7 sacks. We didn't win the line of scrimmage, he said. You can't play playoff football and not win the line of scrimmage. Obviously, they, being Miami, were able to get the run game going, and we wound up losing the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball, and you're just not going to win when that's the case. And I'll add, Brad, Elko mentioned the 7 sacks given up. Bain had 3 of those. Keionte Scott, add him to the game balls list, by the way. Forgot to mention Keionte Scott. Add that man to the game balls. I know people have already been saying that in the comments, I'm sure. He had 2 sacks. He had a forced fumble for a takeaway. So Miami gets 7 sacks on Marcel Reed, Brad. Texas A&M, the entire season, regular season, only surrendered 12 sacks all year long. And then Miami goes for 7 in one game. That's not just losing the line of scrimmage. They got baptized at the line of scrimmage.
And on top of that, right, going back to, giving Mario credit, we've seen time and time before this year the false starts on our offensive line. We were in the second most attended college football playoff game ever was on Saturday. And all that crowd noise, no false starts for Miami and multiple false starts for Texas A&M. That goes to show you right there the discipline that it takes to do something like that. So shout out to Mirabal and Mario and the rest of the staff for getting these guys prepared, man. And I think to your point, there's stats and there's proof. And I think one team had fluff and the other team was tough. And I think when you line it up, man, there was only one team that really wanted that football game, and it was Miami. I think after the second quarter, you could tell the Aggie fans were starting to get very worried. They knew that they would have to put up points to be able to compete with Miami, and they just kept saying Carson Beck's trash. Carson Beck's trash. His eyes look different ways. I'm just like, what does that have to do with the football game? Like the jokes aren't even funny. But hey, man, we did what we were supposed to do. We came into College Station. We took over Texas. In about 10 days, we're gonna have to go right back to Texas and take it over yet again. And hey, we had the hardest map to get to the final for a reason, right? Nobody wants to see the home team and a college championship play at home. Something that's never been done before. I think this is the year that Miami needs to go and show the world what we're capable of. And I think we haven't even touched our ceiling yet. We haven't had a complete football game yet. We haven't had a game where the offensive play calling has been like just where everything's just been perfect. And that just goes to show you that there's still room for improvement. And I mean, look at a guy like Gerald Pringle, who's been a stud the last few weeks. You didn't get to see him much this past weekend. That's okay. That means next weekend, that's just another player that Ohio State's going to have to prepare for. And that just goes to show you they were worried about Carson Beck or Rueben Bain. Well, guess what? You still had Akeem Mesidor. You still had Ahmad Moten, another guy who was a stud on Saturday. Ahmad Moten was balling, being aggressive. Blay as well. I mean, we got so many guys that are hungry and just wanting to be that starting position. And it just goes back to when Miami was the best. It all started on Green Tree. You get hurt, you lose your spot to someone else, you may never get back on the football field.
On that note on Green Tree, you talked about the 0 false starts, which was huge when you're playing in front of 104,000 plus. I was working on the radio broadcast, and Alex Mirabal, the O-line coach, was interviewed on 104.3 WQAM afterwards, and he said, obviously he's proud of his unit for not having a single false start, but he mentioned they were so prepared for the noise that they were, and that indoor facility, Brad, they got some heavy-duty speakers in there in Coral Gables. They can make that IPF really, really loud. And according to Mirabal, they had the crowd noise blasting so much in there that they made their practice fields louder than Kyle Field was. So they were more than prepared for that noise. But yeah, in 10 days, you bring on the Buckeyes. We'll take the look ahead when we come back. Brad Tejeda is with us. We're on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You want to keep it locked. And folks, when you're looking for tickets to the Cotton Bowl to see your Hurricanes in a historic college football quarterfinal, you want to check out the Gametime app. There is nothing like college football season, guys. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets, that part used to be frustrating with long queues, logins, and prices jumping at checkout. But that's why Gametime gives the advantage back to the fans. It is the easiest way to unlock amazing college football tickets and experiences in just a few taps, folks. The app is incredibly easy to use. You go from browsing to buying tickets in just minutes. I love to be able to see the view from my seat right there in the app before buying. You know exactly what you're going to be seeing. The zone deals always stand out. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. And folks, knowing the prices include the fees up front will make the whole process stress-free. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create your account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Locked On College is your code, my friends. We'll see you at the Cotton Bowl. We have the pleasure of being joined here by our good friend, Brad Tejeda. So, Brad, I mentioned Miami are 9.5-point underdogs against Ohio State. You're going up against the defending national champs. How you feeling heading into what you describe as a revenge game on December 31st?
Honestly, I'm actually more confident in this game than I was in the A&M game for a few reasons. One, I think us going against a team like A&M this past weekend, coming off a few weeks with not playing football, I thought the first thing was, how are we going to be able to respond coming off of a couple weeks off of bye? And we saw on Saturday that we responded very well. When you look at the teams like Texas A&M and Ohio State on the offensive side of the football, they're very similar when it comes to the wide receiver room, right? They have a ton of guys that can make plays. And I loved to see what our secondary did against the Aggies, where I think in an indoor facility at Jerry's World, you're probably going to see a lot more balls being thrown than what we just saw on Saturday. But on the flip side to that, Ohio State's a lot more banged up on the offensive line, the football. I'm not very impressed with their running game. I'm not that impressed with Julian Sane. I think one of the factors that we had to implement in the game plan for this past weekend with the dynamic running ability of Marcel Reed, what we saw, it kind of took our defense a whole half to kind of settle in and adjust to that. This is going to be something that we're not going to have to go into this football game having to worry about. In my opinion, this is going to be a more one-dimensional offensive team in Ohio State. And going back to your point with Mike Elko's press conference, that was the main reason why we were able to be so beneficial in this game, is because we made Texas A&M one-dimensional. I love our matchups in a lot of different areas. And I mean, I think it's very hard to not, bring up Jeremiah Smith, as we all know, who's the number one player on Ohio State, number one player out of South Florida. But guess what? We got dogs on this team, and we got guys that have played with this young man their entire life. They know his skill set. They know his tendencies. They know this isn't the first time a guy like OJ Romanis Frederick has seen a Jeremiah Smith, right? We have guys that know what he's capable of. And again, we have a guy like Corey Heatherman who's going to be very strategic with his defensive game plan. And Mario Cristobal knowing how much of a game this means to the fan base, to the community, to the university, to himself. We're not going to take this matchup lightly at all. And I expect many more Cane fans to travel more than before this past weekend, just because of what this game, what this matchup means to the university. This is the revenge. I'm gonna be bringing one of those flags with me to Dallas, because I'm gonna make sure that doesn't get thrown this time.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Miami wins, you're going to have a chance to win every football game you play when you can control the line of scrimmage. Ohio State has two of the very best players in the country, right? You would take Jeremiah Smith almost against, almost or maybe any receiver in the country, Caleb Downs, generational DB. But I think Miami has the better overall team. And when you have lines of scrimmages like Miami's got, when you have X factors like Rueben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, which, it's going to give OSU so many headaches just to prepare for Miami's pass rush and how you either scheme around it, because you're certainly not just going to be able to block these guys man to man. You need to find a way to scheme around Bain and Mesidor, which is a problem because they're on either side of the line. So you can't scheme away from one without going right towards the other. So just Miami's line of scrimmage gives them a chance to win every single game that they play, Brad. And so, yeah, I mean, Miami's going to have to score more than 10 points to win this one. But you would figure indoor conditions, like you mentioned, you could probably hit a couple field goals in this next one. Carter Davis, of course, struggled going 1 for 4 the other day. And you're going to be more equipped to hit some explosive plays down the field. So, honestly, Brad, I mentioned Miami is a 9.5-point underdog. I understand why Ohio State's favored. I get it. I'm not saying Miami should be, but I do think 9.5 is too big of a number. And from what I understand, Andy Slater had sent an X post today. He talks to the people from like the Hard Rock app that apparently Miami is like one of the most bet on sides, that a lot of money is coming in on Miami to cover that 9.5-point spread. So I don't think they got that number right.
Yeah, I expect that line to shift dramatically the closer it gets to the game. I wouldn't see it being more than maybe a 4.5, 5.5 point spread for Ohio State, but it just goes back to what we've been saying this whole time, man. This is the reason we're an underdog story, right? This is what we wanted. We don't like to be the team where everyone's hyping them up. We want people to be like, hey, this team isn't the same you. This is exactly what happened this past weekend. And I think this team and the players, they're taking on the mentality going forward. And I'm excited, man. I hope many Cane fans travel. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, man, wear that orange and green proud. It's great to be a Miami Hurricane.
It's great to talk to Brad Tejeda. Safe travels back home. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. Make sure to smash that like button, subscribe. Make sure to check out the Everydayer Club all access page. You can click the link in the show notes below. And folks, sweet victory. We got a big week coming up on Locked On Canes. We'll talk to you all throughout the week right here on the #1 Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.